There were 40 guests, fairy lights glowing over the backyard, music low, and everyone clinking glasses like we were the picture-perfect family. I stood there, smiling politely, holding a drink I hadn't even sipped, when my dad's voice cut through the air, sharp, loud, and humiliating. "Sarah, it's time you sell that damn house. Your brother's loan isn't going to pay itself." My fingers froze around the glass. Conversations died. Every single person turned toward us. I laughed nervously, thinking maybe, just maybe, he'd laugh too and say it was a joke. But no, his eyes were dead serious. I looked at my mom. She didn't even flinch, just stood there like she agreed with him, like it was the most normal thing in the world to tell your daughter to throw away the one thing she built with her own blood and sweat, just to save her brother. I didn't say a word. Not yet. But inside me, something snapped. They thought I'd stay quiet like I always had, that I'd nod and swallow it, just like the hundreds of times before when they made me feel like I was less than their golden boy. But this time, I was done playing the obedient daughter. I glanced at my brother, Ryan, standing there in his branded shirt and fake Rolex, acting like he belonged on a magazine cover. Well, the truth was he couldn't pay his car loan, let alone his mounting debt. He didn't even look ashamed. He just smirked like he knew I'd cave, and maybe I would have years ago. Back when I still craved their approval. Back when I thought family meant sacrifice and silence. But that version of me, she didn't exist anymore. I placed my glass down gently, pretending like I was calm. But inside, my heart was thundering. Not from fear, oh no. From restraint. Because I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell at the top of my lungs about how unfair it all was. But I didn't. I just smiled and said the 7 words that made every single person in that backyard stop breathing. Then start packing. You've got 30 days. My dad's face twisted. What are you talking about? I tilted my head, savoring the moment. You really don't know, do you? The crowd murmured. Whispers floated around. My mom looked confused. My brother's jaw clenched. I leaned in slightly, my voice cool. You've been living in my house. And now, I want it back. Silence, so thick it hurt my ears. And as their faces turned pale under the string lights, I knew this was just the beginning. They thought they knew me, but I was about to do something no one had ever imagined. People always assumed I had it easy, that because I was quiet, polite, and never caused a scene, I must have been the favorite child. They were wrong. From the very beginning, it was Ryan. Ryan with the big brown eyes and that fake charm he wore like a designer suit. My parents acted like he was born to be great. Every time he failed, they blamed the world. Every time I succeeded, they acted like it was luck. I got straight A's. They nodded. Ryan passed with a C-. Let's celebrate. He worked so hard. By the time I was 15, I'd figured it out. The rules in our house didn't apply equally. I cooked dinner while Ryan played video games. I studied for scholarships while they paid for his tuition again and again because he kept dropping out of every college he enrolled in. And I never said a word. I worked 2 jobs through university. Came home late, feet aching, while Mom packed Ryan's favorite biryani for him because he was too stressed to cook. They drained part of their retirement fund to buy him a new car when his old one got repossessed. When I asked for a small loan to help cover a down payment for a studio apartment, Dad looked at me like I was asking him to sell a kidney. You're independent, Sarah, he said. You've always figured it out. We don't worry about you. That line stuck with me. We don't worry about you. It sounded like a compliment until I realized it was code for you're on your own. Even when I landed a full-time job right after graduation, I came home to find Ryan in the living room, jobless again, telling our parents about his new startup idea. And once again, they clapped like proud seals. That startup failed within 6 months. And guess who paid his credit card bills again? Not me, but they expected me to. Quietly, like always. I remember one night, rain pouring outside. I came home soaked after staying late at the office. My shoes squelched with every step. I walked into the kitchen and Mom said, "Don't drip everywhere. Ryan's asleep, don't wake him." That was the moment I stopped trying to belong. I started planning my own life, inch by inch. Saved every bonus. Lived below my means. Stopped sharing my milestones because they weren't celebrated anyway. Eventually, I bought my own house. My dream house. No co-signers. No handouts. Just me. And the moment I shared the news, Dad asked if I'd put it in the family trust. Mom asked if Ryan could maybe move into the guest room, just for a few months. That's when I knew. To them, I was the backup plan. The emotional punching bag. The golden daughter turned scapegoat. But I wasn't going to be silent anymore. They'd built their world on the assumption I'd always be the one to sacrifice. Now, I was going to show them what happened when the quiet one stops playing nice. It wasn't just a house. It was mine. Every brick, every polished floorboard. Every key on that ring represented years of hustling, of swallowing my pride, of hearing no and still pushing forward. I didn't have a fairy godmother, no rich uncle, no secret inheritance. Just a spreadsheet, sheer willpower, and a silent promise to myself. One day, I'll walk into a place that no one can take from me. And I did. The day I got the keys, I cried alone in the empty living room. No champagne, no cheering family, just me and the walls that now held space for my freedom. But freedom in my family came with strings. When I first mentioned the house, my mom's first words weren't, "I'm proud of you." They were, "Wow, so far from the city? Are you sure it's safe there alone?" Translation: why didn't you let us control this too? A week later, Ryan stopped by with my dad. He walked through the house like he was doing me a favor, pointing out things like, "This kitchen's nice. You could totally Airbnb the basement and help with our situation." Our situation, what he meant was his mess. His fourth failed business. The luxury SUV he couldn't pay off. The personal loan that was now threatening to tank his credit score. Then came the bombshell. Dad sat me down and said, with all the fake calm in the world, "Look, sweetheart, we've always supported each other in this family. It's time you step up. Sell this place. Use the money to get Ryan back on his feet. Your turn to help, okay?" I stared at him, trying not to laugh or cry. My turn? As if I hadn't been silently helping my whole life while Ryan ran through every opportunity like it was a toy he got bored of. I nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll think about it." And they thought they'd won. But in my mind, something dark and razor-sharp had already started forming. I wasn't going to sell. Not even close. Instead, I made a quiet call to my real estate lawyer. I asked him how to set up a private LLC. I transferred the deed into it. Made sure nothing was traceable to me publicly. Then I made another call. To a property manager. I told them I was moving abroad for work and needed someone to handle the house. In truth, I was moving just 15 minutes away into a small rental nearby so I could watch everything unfold. 3 weeks later, I handed over the keys. To my parents. "I'm going to lease the place for a while," I told them. "You guys can stay here rent-free for now. Just help me keep it in shape." Their eyes lit up like they'd won the lottery. I smiled, because they had no idea. The clock had already started ticking. The day I moved out of my own house, no one saw it coming. I packed my things in silence. No drama. No teary goodbyes. Just one suitcase, a laptop bag, and a calm that felt foreign after years of swallowing rage. I left behind the custom furniture, the plush rugs, even the artwork I had saved for months to buy. It wasn't giving up, it was bait. My parents had moved in 2 days prior. They were still getting comfortable, already complaining about the water pressure and saying the lighting wasn't warm enough. Dad had dragged Ryan's old gaming chair into the living room like it belonged in a museum. Meanwhile, I slipped away into a simple rental. At least that's what I let them believe. It was a modest house in a quiet neighborhood with a small garden out front. Clean, unfussy, peaceful. But here's the twist. I own this one too. Bought it under a different LLC. Different address on the paperwork. Different name on the mailbox. It was all legal. Invisible. My second home was mine, hidden in plain sight. I even had fake lease papers made just in case they snooped. The next week, I invited Mom for tea, hoping to drive the nail in further. She looked around the humble place and barely concealed her smirk. "Bit of a downgrade, isn't it?" she said, sipping her chai with that sweet-coated venom only mothers can perfect. "But at least you're learning to live within your limits." I smiled. "Yeah, I'm trying." Dad came by later that week, brought me leftovers like I was a charity case. Hard to see you here. After that beautiful house, he said with a sigh. But at least you're not paying a mortgage anymore. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I let them believe it all. That I was broke. That I'd sold the house for Ryan. That I had once again played the dutiful daughter who gave up her dreams for her family. And that's what stung them the most. They thought I had nothing left. Ryan came over one day, tossed his car keys on my table, like I was still the family help. You know, he said, I might need some help with the insurance on my BMW. Things are tight. I nodded like a broken doll. Of course. Then I turned off my phone for the rest of the day. The truth was, every visit, every smug smile from them was feeding the fire I had been building. Not out of hate, but clarity. They needed to believe I was down and out because when the curtain dropped, I wanted the gas to hit their lungs like ice water. This wasn't just a plan. This was a performance. And the best scenes were yet to come. The backyard was lit with fairy lights, laughter, and the kind of smug joy that made my stomach churn. It was Ryan's lone celebration party. Yes, that's what they called it. Apparently, my parents had miraculously managed to get his debts paid off, and tonight was a toast to his fresh start. They acted like they'd saved the world. Not a single soul knew they were living in the house they thought I had sacrificed. Not one person knew the truth. I stayed quiet all evening. Polite smile, quiet laughter, one glass of sparkling water in my hand that I nursed for hours. My parents, however, were basking in attention, their voices rising with every compliment thrown at their golden son. She gave up everything for her brother, Mom told Aunt Nazreen, loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. Sold her dream house. We raised such a selfless girl. She always puts the family first, Dad added with a smirk in my direction, like I was some obedient servant getting a participation trophy. And then it happened, right in the middle of the backyard, as Ryan was giving some half-drunk speech about redemption and second chances. My dad clinked his glass for attention. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge my daughter, he said, motioning toward me like I was a dog. She made the ultimate sacrifice. Sold her house, her dream, for her brother's future. Everyone clapped. 40 people, applauding a lie. Then he said it, the line that snapped something deep inside me. She did it without question. And honestly, if we ever need her to step up again, I know she will. That's what family does. Laughter. Nods. More clinking glasses. I stood up slowly. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. I'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head. You're right, Dad. That is what family does. I looked around at the crowd. But what family doesn't do is lie, manipulate, and mooch off the only child who ever stood on her own 2 feet. The backyard fell silent. I took a breath, then turned toward my parents. You never paid off Ryan's loan. I did, but not by selling my house. My mother blinked like I'd slapped her. I didn't sell it, I said louder now. I still own that house. And the one I live in now. I own that too. Both under separate LLCs. Both in my name. I'm not broke. I never was. My father's jaw clenched. What are you saying? I'm saying, I stepped forward, that the house you're living in, the one you think I gave up, you're tenants. And as your landlord, I'm giving you 30 days notice to vacate. The color drained from their faces. Someone gasped. I looked at the stunned crowd and smiled. I've played the humble daughter long enough. It's time I lived like the woman I actually am. Then I sat down, sipped my sparkling water, and let the silence thunder louder than applause ever could. The days after the backyard party were like walking through a battlefield, except I was the only one still standing. My phone blew up the next morning. Missed calls from Mom. Voicemails from Dad. Even Ryan had the audacity to text me, calling me dramatic for exposing the truth in front of everyone. He said I should have kept it in the family. As if keeping it in the family hadn't already burned me to the bone. But I stayed silent, let them sit in the discomfort. A week later, a formal notice was delivered to the house, my house, by my lawyer. It was a clean, polite, legally worded eviction. 30 days to vacate, effective immediately. No threats. No nastiness. Just business. Mom called instantly. This time she didn't yell. She begged. Sarah, sweetheart, please. Where will we go? How could you do this to your own parents? I didn't flinch. The same way you guilt me into giving up everything, I replied, calm as glass. That house was my reward for a decade of sacrifice. You treated it like a pawn. I'm just taking back what was always mine. Dad didn't call. He sent an email. One line. You've embarrassed this family. I didn't reply to that either. I didn't need to. Meanwhile, word spread like wildfire through the family. Aunties called to check in, which really meant gather gossip. Cousins who hadn't messaged me in years suddenly popped up with "You go, girl" texts. Some admired me. Some judged me. None of it mattered. The best part? The tenants they had unknowingly mocked, my neighbors, started treating me differently. One even stopped me in the grocery store. You're the one who gave them 30 days, right? That was brave. I just smiled and nodded. Some debts can't be paid in silence anymore. 2 weeks before move out, I passed by the house. Dad was sitting on the porch, shoulders hunched. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of entitlement was finally crushing him. I didn't stop. Instead, I drove past in my quiet car, windows up, music playing low. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. I was honoring my own survival. Ryan tried once more, showing up at my rental doorstep. He had that fake soft tone he always used when he needed something. You've made your point, he said. But there are parents, Sarah. You can't just kick them out. I can, I said firmly. And I am. He scoffed. You used to be so loyal. I tilted my head. No, Ryan. I used to be so blind. By the time the final week rolled around, the house was nearly empty. Furniture gone. Curtains taken down. The dream I had once built and offered as shelter to those who never deserved it was finally mine again, not just in name, but in power. And when day 30 came, I stood at the gate as they drove off. Not a word was exchanged, but their silence was louder than any apology they never gave. It didn't take long for Ryan's carefully spun web of lies to start unraveling. Turns out, being bailed out once just gave him the confidence to dig a deeper hole. Without my parents' roof over their heads or their fantasy that I'd always come through, they all began to feel what real pressure tasted like. And Ryan? He cracked first. It started with a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. My co-worker Asha, whose cousin worked at the same finance firm Ryan claimed to be consulting for, spilled the truth over lunch. Sarah, she said, leaning in like she was about to drop a bomb. Your brother never had a real job there. He was doing shady referral work under the table. Word is he's being investigated for using client names to apply for private loans. I blinked. What kind of loans? The kind that need someone else to foot the bill when things go south. I shouldn't have been surprised, but it still hit me like ice down the spine. The golden boy? He'd been a walking debt grenade this entire time. 2 weeks later, I got an email from a lawyer I didn't recognize, apparently one of Ryan's former investors. He was listed as a co-guarantor on a loan Ryan had forged. My name had popped up in their digging. The only reason I wasn't involved? Because, thank God, I'd legally separated all assets under LLCs years ago. Every house, every penny, untouchable. I forwarded the email to my own attorney and blocked the number. By the end of that month, Ryan's car was repossessed, his bank account frozen, and his face on a local news report about small-scale financial fraud. It was surreal watching the TV screen show his mugshot while my parents sat in their rental apartment, one they could barely afford on their pensions. Mom called, crying. This family is cursed, she sobbed. Why is this happening to us? But I didn't respond with pity. I responded with truth. This isn't a curse, Mom. This is consequence. You treated Ryan like a prince and me like a purse. And now he's bankrupt, morally and financially. Dad never called. He was too proud. But I heard from Uncle Tamor that he'd been asking around about legal ways to sue his daughter. I almost laughed. Sue me? For what? Owning my life? They lost the illusion that Ryan would ever be their redemption. And without that illusion, their carefully constructed kingdom, built on denial, lies, and favoritism, collapsed. The irony? The very daughter they once dismissed had become untouchable. And the son they crowned? He was now nothing but a headline. And yet, even as they watched everything fall apart, they never said thank you. Never said sorry. Not once. But I didn't need their apology anymore. Because the truth had done what years of begging never could. It made them feel what it was like to be powerless. And that was justice enough for me. 6 months later, I stood in front of tall glass windows overlooking the ocean, barefoot, coffee in hand, and peace wrapped around me like silk. The sun was warm on my face, and for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next blow. I was simply living. The house wasn't just beautiful. It was a masterpiece I designed myself. Every tile, every piece of art, every quiet corner, it reflected me. Not the daughter who was guilt-tripped into silence. Not the sister who was overlooked. But the woman who finally chose herself. And the best part? They had no idea. To them, I was still renting a modest house after my supposed fall from grace. They thought I'd let go of everything. What they didn't know was, I'd only let go of them. A friend of my mother's, an auntie who always had more opinions than manners, saw me leaving a private business event one night. She saw the car, the press, the photographer taking photos for a Women in Leadership feature. The next day, I got a message from my mother. We didn't know you owned your own company, or 3. Followed by, your new house, is it the one from that magazine shoot? No apology. No, we were wrong. Just the stunned realization that the daughter they once treated like an ATM had become a force of nature, and they weren't even part of the story anymore. It was poetic. Ryan tried to reappear too. After his legal fallout and public disgrace, he was doing freelance consulting, which was just code for begging people to trust him again. He emailed me, "Hey sis, maybe we could grab coffee sometime? Talk. Catch up." I stared at the screen for a moment, then deleted it. No reply. No need. Because here's the thing, this wasn't a revenge story. This was a rebirth. I had built more than a business. I had built freedom. My team respected me. My clients trusted me. I mentored young women who reminded me of my younger self. Hungry, capable, and tired of being told to be quiet. My final move wasn't to destroy them. It was to become someone they'd never reach again. At a charity gala weeks later, I accepted an award for community entrepreneurship. The room was full of leaders, mentors, people who saw me for who I really was. As I stepped off the stage, a woman approached me. Slightly older, tearful, a mother of 2 daughters. "You give people like us hope," she whispered. That was the moment I knew. Everything I went through, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the silence, it wasn't in vain. It had carved me into someone unbreakable, someone real. They underestimated me, but I never did. And now, I was no longer the golden daughter they dismissed. I was the woman they could never forget.